a Talmud page, which is sort of like, been always, it's kind of like the highest form of learning in many ways in Judaism. I have to, give you a warning. It's hard because it's not.
Oh, yeah, mine.
Are there any more of them?
Are there any more?
Of what?
The
That's
Yeah.
what we're going over?
Oh,
Yeah.
don't ever have to bother.
Sorry.
Yeah. You might have to share though, and it's also going to be on the screen. Do you see it on the screen now?
Okay.
Okay.
Look at mine.
Okay.
How's this? Is this better? Kaya? Is this better? Oh, okay. So maybe, do you have the pages?
Yeah, we have.
Oh, okay, you have the pages.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so if you want to follow the Hebrew and Aramaic, so you would do it on here. If not, you would turn the page. Okay, if you want to follow the English translation, which I recommend, you would turn the page where it says page 1. Okay. Great. So the question that the Talmud is asking, and this is the first page of the Talmud, and I'm sorry, it's the first question of the Mishnah. The Mishnah is the book from 219, and the Talmud is a commentary on the Mishnah, right? That's what we've established in the last few lessons we've had. And the Mishnah, okay, is asking us from when, that is, from what time, does one recite Shema in the evening? Okay, so the assumption is that you read Shema, and you're supposed to read it in the evening, and there's supposed to be a time when you're supposed to start reading it. So there are a lot of things to unpack in just one little question. Okay, so if I ask you, you're invited to dinner, you might want to ask on what day, on what time, where is the dinner? Okay, some of you might want to know what's in the dinner. Is it going to be kosher? Is it going to be meat? Is it going to be dairy? Okay, should I bring anything? There could be a lot of things that come along. So that's really what the Talmud is, or the Mishnah is making a statement, and the Talmud is going to ask us a lot of questions on it. But the Mishnah goes right into one of the answers, okay, and that answer is from the time when the priests enter to partake of their truma. Okay, I have to be honest with you. Okay, I have no clue what time this is. I did not live at the time of the temple. Okay, okay. So now I know that the priests go in to eat their share of the truma. Okay, the truma we said is the part that is donated to the priests. Okay, we said that each of the sacrifices, a portion of it would go to the priests, was donated to the priests. So that's the truma. Okay, so they have a share.
So if you donate a calf.
Yeah, so
Then-
some parts of it go to the priest, some parts are burnt offerings to God, and some go to the priest, and some go to the person themselves to eat. Depends on what sacrifice it is. Okay, so I have no clue what time it is. So now I understand they're talking in a language that is common to them. They probably understood this, right? Okay, because if I gave you the example, I think of last week, I told you go Google it, and if I would have said this 30 years ago, go Google it, you was like, what are you talking about? We don't know what Google is. It's like, how do you go and do something like that? Like so many things that today you understand exactly what I mean in 1 second, only 30 years ago, I have to explain everything to you of what I'm saying, right? So imagine this is exactly the same here. They all know what this is like, go Google it for this. It's like obvious. But for us, and also for the time of the Talmud, because at the time of the Talmud, the temple is no longer standing for hundreds and hundreds of years. So they, and they don't have videos of or YouTubes of what went on there back then. They don't have any recordings. It's kind of like an oral tradition that has been passed from one person to the other, and sometimes it's cut off, right? So we don't know exactly what this time is.
Rabbi, does it mean like when time they go to eat? No,
Yeah, yeah. But what is that time?
whenever they go to eat?
Yeah, but there has to be a fixed time. And also, this is not a time, I would say, maybe I would say what the time you see 3 stars. Okay, maybe that would be more clear. That's the time of the evening. Because what's the question? The question is, when do you recite Shema in the evening? Okay. Now, is that the only time the priests go and eat? Maybe they eat also in the morning. The poor people don't eat, they never eat, right? Maybe they eat around mincha time, which is like the afternoon. Who knows, right?
No, but in the evening.
Yeah.
Google says Tarun is after nightfall.
That what?
After nightfall.
Yeah, okay. That's the Talmud. The Talmud is answering that. Yeah.
What means were they able to tell basically the correct time? Like before midnight or sundown?
They knew very well the times. They knew exactly, how many hours are in the summer.
But what did they use as a device? Did they have a device?
They probably calculated the way the shadow falls, and also, they had stones. They had different ways of calculating these things. They knew exactly the moon cycle, that it's 29 days or 30 days.
And they were accurate enough to.
Oh, they were very accurate. Yeah, that's a good question. But yeah, they had that technology, not in the way that we have by the minutes, okay, or the seconds, but they definitely had a very clear understanding of the time.
Does it mean it say you say before you start to eat? So
No.
if you want to say it, just put something in your mouth.
Yeah, no, that's not what it means. And this is like a special time that everyone knows that this is kind of like the time that, if you want to know what the time is, you just need to watch the priest when they go in. For us, it doesn't mean much. For them, it meant a lot more. We could, we need to go now. We'll go soon to the Talmud, and we'll see how the Talmud deals with it.
Rabbi,
And then, yeah.
is saying the Shema and reading the Shema the same?
Well, that's a very good question. That is being discussed actually in a different part of the tractate. Okay. And the question there is like, how do you recite the Shema? Okay. And is reciting it is also praying it. Okay. And there's also a question, Shema is also in the Bible. So when you get to the part in the Bible that's Shema and you read it as part of the Bible, is it considered like as part of your prayer also or not? There are a lot of questions around that, but you open a whole new topic, which we're not going to.
I apologize.
No, but it's a good question.
Well,
It means you have a Talmudic mind, right? You're asking the right
Well, I
question.
just remember, any question you ask, there might be 5 different answers to it.
Right, probably. And then they ask, okay, until when does the time for the recitation of the evening Shema extend? And one answer is until the end of the first watch. Okay, and this we touched upon last week. Okay, and that is the statement of Rabbi Eliezer. So there are 3 watches to the night. The first watch, which is probably around 10 o'clock, okay, evening till 10 o'clock. The second watch is from like the middle of the night. Okay, it's called the middle watch. And that's from, I would estimate from around 10 to 2 o'clock, something like that. And then there's the last watch of the night, which is from around 2 to 6 in the morning, till like dawn. Depends on what time of the year it is, right? If it's winter, summer, etc. But this rabbi say until midnight, okay, and Rabban Gamliel says until dawn. And then, if you remember, we read the story about the sons of Rabban Gamliel that say they come back from a party, right? It says here a wedding hall, but we established that it did not have to be a wedding hall. It could have been just like the bar, okay? And they said they got home and he was like very upset with him. Where were you? And they're like, well, whatever we were, like, can we read Shema now? Okay, so they're like diverting in a very smart way the discussion, young boys, right? And then he starts a whole debate with them that they could read until dawn. Okay, but it's better not to get to the point where you delay the mitzvah until dawn, because then you might change, the time might change, and then you missed the ability to do that, to say the Shema, right? Okay, so I'm gonna now skip to number 6. See number 6 where it says Gemara? Right, you see that? Is that the same page?
Page
Yeah.
Page 2.
Page
On the
2,
back.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're at the Gemara. The Gemara in Aramaic means Talmud, okay, to study. And I'm reminding you, this is, if the Mishnah is around the year 219, 220, so the Gemara is around the year 550. So it's hundreds of years after, but it's rabbis talking between that timeline until that timeline that are discussing the Mishnah. And so this is sort of like the editor of the Talmud and how he decides to present the commentary of the Talmud, of the Gemara on the Mishnah. Okay, so this is the Gemara. So let's read the introduction here. The introduction I'm reading to you is from the Talmud, the Steinsaltz edition. Okay, this is a very good opportunity to talk about this wonderful, wonderful edition, okay, of the Talmud, where you see there's a Hebrew, and around it is the English commentaries. I'll pass this along. Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz, Zecher Tzadik Levacha, may his memory be for a blessing, is one of the greatest scholars of our time, a very ultra-Orthodox rabbi, but he was very open to everyone, to every human being, Jewish, non-Jewish, but he was especially astonished that there's so many Jews that can't open a Talmud page and can't understand it, and he realized, well, it's kind of not very accessible if you have it, like this. Okay, and it's really, you got to have a very special background in education. Not everyone has that. So he decided to take the entire Talmud, okay, and first of all, translate into modern Hebrew, where he would bring the commentary right along. He would like go word by word, and whenever there would be a word in Aramaic or a phrase in ancient Hebrew that's not clear, he would translate. So you could just read his commentary together with the Talmud, and you understand what's going on in the Talmud page. I've done that many times, okay? Even for me, I mean, it's hard to just read a Talmud page. So I refer to the Steinsaltz edition almost always, okay? And when he became so popular in Israel, they started translating it into first into French, because he's originally from France, okay? And then into English, and I think today it's in Russian, other languages. And it is a very special and unique commentary, and I highly recommend that. Now, you might want to start with one book, because if you buy the whole series, it's probably going to take, 3-4 shelves.
When did you write? When did it
But
write?
He passed away 2 years ago, I think.
Oh.
But he's been doing this his whole life. And it's all online for free, by the way. What I'm showing you now is an online version from Safaria, that website that I talked to you about a few weeks ago, which I will mention again. Okay, So this is the Steinsaltz commentary, the Gemara. The Mishnah opens with the laws concerning the appropriate time to recite Shema with the question, from when does one recite Shema in the evening? With regard to this question, the Gemara asks, on the basis of what prior knowledge does the Tana is like the rabbi of the Mishnah, of our Mishnah, ask, from when? It would seem from his question that the obligation to recite Shema in the evening was already established, and that the Tana, the rabbi, seeks only to clarify details that relate to it. But our Mishnah is the very first Mishnah in the Talmud. So he's asking this like crazy question, but very, very basic question. He's like, I just opened the Talmud. This is my first day learning Talmud. This is, when I open the Bible, it says, in the beginning, God created the world. There's a beginning. But the Talmud starts here, and it starts with a question, okay, about, it was like, from when do you reach Shema in the evening? And he's like saying to us, what do you mean? Like, where do we even know we're supposed to read the Shema? Like, is this how a book should start? Okay, it's like a very Jewish question. Okay, and this is really the first part here. Okay, I'm going to read the Hebrew. Okay, Tana eichakai deketane me'ematai. Okay, so on the basis of what does the Tana writes even from when? That's not a way to start a discussion. If you want to tell us, in the beginning, there was a Torah, and in the Torah, there are commandments for the people of Israel. And one of the main commandments is to recite the Shema. The Shema is a very important message for the Jewish people by God and Moses that received the Torah, and therefore Jews recite the Shema and they cover their eyes, and it's a very important prayer, and you say it twice a day, one in the morning and one in the evening, okay? Because it says b'shoch becha uvkumecha, because it says when you lie down and when you rise up, okay? And therefore we teach our children to say the Shema, and therefore now we're going to discuss from what time in the evening do you say the Shema, right? This should have been the opening of the Mishnah, basically, right? It's like, give us some context, explains to us, like, where is this coming from? But no, like, this is and it's fascinating to see that the Gemara, the rabbis in the Talmud, are able to basically criticize in a very strong way the rabbis of the Mishnah, right? Because if you say this, you're basically implying you didn't do your job right, okay? But you're also implying that it's not always necessary to know these details. And this is kind of like the gap that when you learn the Talmud, you need to fill in these gaps. This is why it's always good to also learn it with someone, like with the Steinsaltz edition, because he would give you that background. He would explain to you what's weird in what's abnormal with this question and kind of like discourse. Okay. Yeah.
So it says volume 17. So it means it's not only one book, they have.
Oh, I said you would fill the whole.
He wrote not only this, but.
Right. He wrote, I think it's like 54 volumes.
On the same subject, like.
On the Talmud. On the Talmud, yeah. It's a few $1,000s investment. Yeah. So this is really the basic question, and it's also a classic question of the Gemara that's telling us we are interested in uncovering what lies behind the questions of the Mishnah. And we want to sort of like tell us what we're interested, which is understanding the reasoning behind the mitzvot. Why do these mitzvot, like the Shema, came to the world? Okay, because as I mentioned, I think a few weeks ago, the Torah does not have a mitzvah to recite the Shema twice a day. Okay, that's also very important to understand. So there's some kind of a tradition that emerged around the Jewish people to do that, although it doesn't say so in an immediate way in the Torah. And the Gemara is trying to fill exactly that gap, which the Mishnah is not interested in discussing because they see it as a given. Yeah.
What time of day does the Torah, within the Torah, when they have the Shema, what time of day is that stated?
We don't know. I mean, it's the Shema appears in the book of Deuteronomy, and it's part of the speech that Moses gives to the people of Israel in the book of Dvarim, and he's probably telling it to them at daytime, but we have no evidence of that. But
Does he refer to when he just came off the mountain?
yeah, he's telling them this is sort of like what I received on the mountain. And he's like telling them, Shema said, "Hear, O people of Israel, our God is one God." Okay, but he's not saying this to them. And now, from now on, you will say this every morning and every evening.
Right.
It does not say that there. Okay, and then the next question, yeah.
Maybe it's the evening and maybe it's the morning. So if he comes off the mountain in the evening and tells the people Shema.
Yeah, I understand what you're trying to kind of like determine what time according to that, but that's not where the Talmud is going. I mean, it could be a way, sometimes they would do that, but not at this point here. Okay. And then they're asking, Vitu is furthermore, Mai shna detane be'arvit bereisha, litnei de shacharit bereisha. Okay, so they're kind of like going a little bit in the direction you're going, Jerry. Okay, the Gemara asks, and furthermore, what distinguishes the evening Shema that it was taught first? Let the Tana, the rabbi of the Mishnah, teach regarding the recitation of the morning Shema first, since most mitzvot apply during the day. The Tana should discuss the morning Shema before discussing the evening Shema, just as the daily morning offering is discussed before the evening offering. Okay. Thank you. These are the Merkaz flyers. Oh, perfect. Thank you. So it's telling us here, but this is like why vote Merkaz. So this is if it's not just because the rabbi said so, this would give you a better explanation. So you might want to take these flyers. They're very good. Okay, so the question now is, okay, we've established that we need to read the Shema and we understand that. But the second problem we have with this, why aren't they starting with the Shema recitation in the morning? Most of the mitzvahs are related to the morning. Okay, you put on tefillin in the morning. Okay, the sacrifices begin in the morning. Okay, so there's like, it makes much more sense to talk about the mitzvahs of reading the Shema in the morning. Okay. Okay, don't pass on these. These are not related to the class. Go back to the text. Okay, to number 7. You read this after the class.
Don't read it.
You're easily distracted.
I know. We're ADD.
Okay, so you understand. So this is like another problem the Talmud has, or another question they're raising on the Mishnah is why not start with the morning Shema? Okay, and now they're going to offer a single response to both questions. So we have 2 questions, right? The question number 1 is why do we start? I mean, what is this reading of the Shema? Where does it come from that we're supposed to even do it? Okay, and the second question is, why do we start with the evening Shema and not with the morning Shema?
Is there a difference between the two?
No,
No, these are sort of like the problems that the Talmud is having with the Mishnah. Okay,
So, I mean, how do you know which one you're doing if they're the same?
no, you're supposed to do it, both of them. You're supposed to do the evening and the morning.
Okay, but they're the same.
Yeah, they're the same. They're exactly the same. That wasn't, the issue is not what is the text we're
So-
saying?
So what you're saying is, they're starting in the evening one, why aren't they starting in the morning one? Is that what
Yeah.
you should say.
Right, yeah, it's the same text though. It's the same Shema Yisrael, Adonai, Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Keeps you safe overnight.
Hmm?
Keeps you safe overnight.
That's a very good answer.
And then
okay.
in the morning, it reminds you who you are.
Okay, very good. That's a very good answer. But I could answer back. I'll first do the morning, which reminds me who I am, and then in the evening it will keep me safe, right? It could go the other way around. It doesn't have to be that way.
I don't
That order.
understand what the difference is between the two. Are all the words the same?
All the words are the same, okay? The words of the Shema are the same, but there's an obligation to recite them twice a day,
Okay,
okay? One in the morning when you wake up, and one in the evening when you lie down.
okay, but since they're the same,
Well, my grandchildren will always put to bed with this.
you're
now.
saying
And I
the
just-
same thing in the
I didn't
morning
know
that you're saying in the
Right.
evening, so you're saying, why can't you say the morning one in the evening?
Oh, no,
No.
no. The Talmud is asking, why is the discussion of the Mishnah begins with the evening one when there is less commandments that are related to the evening? Why doesn't it start the discussion? Why isn't the discussion about saying the Shema is about when to start doing it in the morning? Okay,
So what you're talking about are the
Is it-
commandments, not the actual verbal.
yeah, exactly. Right, it's about the commandments. There are more commandments you should be there that we have in the morning. So let's first discuss about what time should we do the morning commandments, okay? And now they're gonna give two answers, two responses to both questions. And I'll read first the Aramaic. Tana akra ka'e. Okay, dichtiv b'shokbecha ufhumecha. והכי קטני, זמן קריאת שמע דשכיבה אימת, משעה שהכהנים נכנסים לאכול בתרומתם. Okay, so the Tana, the rabbi of the Mishnah, bases himself on the verse as it is written. Okay, now the bold part is the translation of the Talmud, and now the part that's not bold are Rabbi Steinsaltz and his commentary, which allows us to really understand the more coded answers of the Gemara. Okay, so he's telling us basically the rabbi of the Mishnah is basing himself on what is written. Okay, you will talk of them when you sit in your home and when you walk along the way, when you lie down and when you arise. Okay, that's from Deuteronomy, right? So when we say b'shochbecha uvkumecha, when you lie down and when you rise, and it also says you will talk of them when you sit in your home and when you walk along the way. Okay, and then the bold part is when you lie down and when you rise. So this is when you're supposed to talk about it. You're supposed to recite the Shema twice. And when are you supposed to do it? When the time of lying down and when the time of arising. B'shochbecha uvkumecha.
If you
Yeah,
look at this literally, it's 4 times.
why?
Start, number 1. Sorry. When you sit in your home.
Ooh, that's very good. When you sit at home,
Number 2,
when you walk along the way,
number 3.
when you lie down,
Number
and when
4.
you arise. Okay? So George is trying to, go back into the Talmud and interfere the rabbis with their job. But don't worry, they thought about that. They thought about that themselves as well. Okay, now this is like a crucial part. Okay, so I want you to see this, and I'm gonna color this. Okay,
The last time
so
you
it's really
decided to
clear.
fly backwards.
And I'm gonna choose red. Okay, so you see the part that's red.
The number what on there?
8.
On the screen, it's on screen.
Do you see on the screen? It's the end of page 2. The end of page 2
Mhm.
and the beginning of page 3.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Gemara, when you open a page of the Gemara, and I did that for you as well, right? Because you have that here, okay? Right, you have that here. You will see only in the Hebrew, you will see only the bolded part when you lie down and when you rise. So the rabbis chose only to quote this part of the verse. They're allowed to do that. They want to prove to us what, okay, again, question is how many times or when do we say the Shema? Okay. Question is, okay, you're gonna have to visually understand this, okay? If the question is, when do we say the Shema? Okay, and they want to give us 2 answers, okay? So they're quoting a part of a verse from Deuteronomy to base their decision that you say twice a day Shema when you lie and when you rise, in the morning and in the evening and in the morning. Okay, end of the discussion. However, where's that verse taken from? That verse is taken from the Bible, and it's part of the verse that they cut that verse. That verse has other options of when you say these things, okay? And as George pointed out very cleverly, okay, and you will talk of them, okay, you will talk of them, which is what? Which is really, I guess it's the Shema, okay, you will say these things when you sit in your home, when you walk along the way, 1 and 2, and then number 3 and 4 would be when you lie down and when you rise, okay? However, if we open the Bible and we look at the original context, it doesn't say about reciting the Shema. It just tells us, okay,
Hang them up on the doorpost
right,
of your house.
right. It could be also that. By the way, the Shema is written on the doorposts of our house. How's that called?
Mezuzah.
Okay, right. So it's also there. So the Shema is in different places. Okay.
Rabbi,
So the rabbis would go, wait a minute. The rabbis would then say, oh, George, you know why we ignored these parts? Because they serve us for something else. They serve us for the way you're supposed to recite the Shema. And that we'll see that later on in the Talmud. If you read, the whole Talmud, they will say, we never really related to that part of the verse. Now we're going back. One is you're allowed to recite the Shema sitting. You're allowed to recite the Shema when you're walking, okay? And it comes to teach us that you are not allowed to recite the Shema when you're standing. Which is, by the way, interesting, because in the Reform movement, you do the Shema standing, right? Okay, that's not according to the Talmud. Okay, you're not supposed to say the Shema standing, right? We recite the Shema sitting, right? I'll never let you, and not in my synagogue, I'll never let you recite the Shema standing, unless, okay, when you're doing it in a ceremonial way, when we take out the Torah, right? Okay, or before we go into the mikveh if we are about to convert, okay, because that's a ceremonial way. That is not the obligation of doing the Shema twice a day, in the morning and the evening. So there are different forms of when we say the Shema, and the rabbis, okay, they try to justify from the Bible, okay, different parts of these practices of why we do the Shema. That's a very good question, and I hope I answered that in a way that explains how they take a verse kind of like dissected, say this part is really related to this part is really related to this. And they do this because it's kind of like this is the way they are able to base the justification to why we do things, because they want to say it comes from the Bible. Although I clearly said, and I keep saying this again and again, the Bible does not tell us anywhere there's a mitzvah to recite the Shema, okay, in that form. That is a tradition, that's an oral tradition that is somewhere along the line developed. It's not clear exactly when, okay? And it's still an obligation. It doesn't mean we don't have to do it, okay? Because we follow the laws of the rabbis in the Talmud and the Mishnah. But in terms of the actual writing this in the Bible, it doesn't say so. Yeah.
Is this also a source when you lie down and when you arise for the beginning of the days, the holidays, or something like that?
That's going to be a little bit later on.
Here's
Okay,
another-
when does the date start?
I have another question. The poem, you shall put that along, whatever. When thou sittest by the way, la, la, la. Do you think that has anything to do with the secular Christian poem that children say? Now I lay me down to sleep.
course.
I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul will take. I mean, children say
That's a
that.
Christian song?
Yes.
Yes, and children in America say that. My kids came home from nursery school with that. They didn't go to a Jewish nursery school. This was in Cincinnati. But I just wonder if they took that from the Bible. That
Yeah,
when
very
you
much.
write
Yeah, it's
verses and-
probably based on the Bible, and also when we recite the Adon Olam at the end of services, that also says something similar to that.
All
Okay,
right.
yeah,
Rabbi, and isn't this something that I was asking before? Like you say this before you eat.
what's before, to do the Shema?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Because-
bringing in a completely different topic that's being discussed later on,
Okay.
which is,
Okay.
can you eat before you start the prayer service? Okay, and there are a lot of answers about that. One of the answers is no, you have to first do services and then eat. And then some people say, no, you could eat something light as long as you don't wash your hands and do hamotzi and have like a whole meal. So if you, and then it says, well, if you're someone who's sick, then you could definitely eat before. There are different answers and categories to that, okay?
Rabbi,
But it's a good question, it's being discussed as well, yeah.
You said that you can only say the Shema when you are sitting.
Walking,
But
Lying.
but here it commands when you lie down and when you arise. This means that you're still in bed before you can stand up.
no, so when you lie down is when you go to sleep, okay?
Right.
And there's the Shema there is also what's called Shema Alamita, which is doing Shema on your bed, okay? Before you go to sleep, okay, according to the Jewish tradition, you are supposed to recite the Shema.
Okay.
Okay, so before you close, I do that every day. It's a recommended practice to every one of you, is to recite the Shema. That's the part that you said that sort of like protects you overnight, right? That's what you mentioned. So, I don't know anyone here, their children, as kids, did your parents do like the Shema going to bed with you? Okay, so it's a nice practice
But
to
when-
do.
when-
And there's like there's a whole text, or I don't do the whole text, I just do like the Shema.
But when you arise, that specifically means you haven't gotten up yet?
No, so when you arise is when you wake up in the morning.
Right.
Okay, and usually when you arise, it's also when you put on your tefillin and your talit and do the morning service.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, it's not the minute you wake up.
But you're standing up at that point.
Yeah, so okay, so what you're saying is, yeah, when you arise could imply that you're standing. Okay, but you're not supposed to do the Shema standing. So the rabbis, you're very smart students, okay? You're too smart. Okay, so
I would put it
basically,
in the S.
this part that's highlighted, okay, comes to say how you recite the Shema, is like what the rabbis say. One is only sitting or walking, okay? And the other one comes to say, when you lie down and arise, these are like the hours of when you do it. So they kind of like divide it. Does it make sense?
No.
Yeah, but I could argue that it makes sense and it doesn't make sense, right? I could argue both ways. Okay, but
When
this is
the
kind of
sun-
like
they
what the
used to-
rabbis have decided.
In agriculture, that when the sun went down is when they really went to bed. And they
Mhm.
woke up when the sun arose.
Exactly, right. So it's very connected to the nature in that sense. You're right. Okay, so now we continue by teaching the laws of the evening Shema first. The Tana has established that the teachings of the oral Torah correspond to that which is taught in the written Torah. Okay, and based on the written Torah, the Tana teaches the oral law. When is the time for the recitation of Shema, of lying down as commandment in the Torah, from when the priests enter to partake of their Truma? Just as the written Torah begins with the evening Shema, so too must the oral Torah. Okay, so this comes to address the second question. Okay, the second question was, why didn't we start with the morning Shema? Okay, and basically they are saying because it says when you lie down and when you arise. Okay, it's sort of like you go to sleep, you say the Shema. You wake up in the morning, you say the Shema. But first you go to sleep. That's kind of like what the Bible say. When you lie down, and only then it says when you arise. So therefore we follow the Bible, okay, and therefore we follow the priests that in their evening dinner, and we don't follow it in their morning dinner. Do you understand sort of like the logic? Okay, and it could be argued a different way, but this is sort of like how they're analyzing the verse. It's like a parallel deduction. The Bible starts with the evening Shema when you lie down, and only then it goes to when you arise in the morning. Say the morning Shema. Therefore, we are learning from that the time is in the evening. We first start with the evening time of to recite the Shema, which is when the priests partake of their Truma, and only then we go to the morning to establish what time in the morning can we start saying the Shema. Okay, and then it goes. And then it goes to another explanation. And this is like a very important term in Aramaic, ve'i ba'et ema, which means if you wish, you could say it in a different way. And this could drive you crazy in the Talmud, because sometimes you spend like a whole hour understanding something that is quite difficult. And then comes this expression, ve'i ba'et ema, 3 words. If you wish, you could understand it in a different way. And then you have to study the whole thing again and spend another hour understanding why could you do it and say it in a different way, okay? But here it's a little bit more simple. And again, Steinsaltz really helps us understand the Talmud in a very friendly manner, okay? So he says, however, there's another possible explanation for why the Mishnah opens with the evening Shema rather with the morning Shema. And then, if you wish, you could say instead that the Tana, the rabbi of the Mishnah, derives the precedence of the evening Shema from the order of the creation of the world. That's what Jerry said before, okay? As it is written in the story of creation, and there was evening, and there was their morning one day. Vayi erev, vayi boker, yom echad, first the evening, and then the morning, and that completes a whole day. So in Judaism, why do we always say the Jewish day begins in the evening, okay, and is completed at the end of the day when the next evening begins, because of the verse, okay, and there was evening and there was morning one day, okay. It doesn't say the morning and the evening in one day, because then we would
Because he
say
separated the dark from the light.
yeah, that's sort of like, that's the argument here, okay? So according to this verse, day begins with the evening and not the morning. For both of these reasons, it was appropriate to open the discussion of the laws of the recitation of Shema with the evening Shema. Okay, so this is very important that we can look at the whole discussion from a different point of view and say it has nothing to do with the priests going in, and when they start eating, that's like a very nice story, but that's not the reason. The reason is because this is how the world's created. In the evening, I mean, the day is complete. First evening and first day. Okay, so we see these are like competing answers in a way. So then we have number 10. Hihachi Seifa de Katane, Bashacha mevarech shtayim lefanea v'achat le'achareh, ba'erev mevarech shtayim lefanea v'shtayim le'achareh litnei de'arvit bereisha. So the Gemara asks, if so, why does the latter clause of the Mishnah, which appears later in the chapter, teach in the morning one recites 2 blessings before the Shema and 1 blessing afterwards, and in the evening one recites 2 blessings before the Shema and 2 afterwards? Based upon the above reasoning, the Mishnah should have taught the blessing recited before and after the evening Shema first. So now they're complicating our lives because they're saying later on, which is, by the way, only in chapter 4, they are going to discuss the morning blessings, okay? And there they start with, in the morning you do these blessings and only then in the evening. Oh, wait. But you started here at the beginning of the Talmud, you started with the evening first in the morning. How come later on you start with the morning and then the evening? Okay, you got to be consistent. Very interesting, right? They're aware of their need to be consistent all along in their discussions, okay? And the Gemara answers, so now, no, don't worry, I'm going to answer you. Indeed, the Tana began by discussing the laws regarding the recitation of the evening Shema, and then taught the laws regarding the recitation of the morning Shema. Once he was already dealing with the morning Shema, he explained the matters of the morning Shema and then explained the matters of the evening Shema. Okay, so they're saying that, well, it really all depends on the context. Because the discussion in chapter 4 is about the morning blessings, that's why they started with morning blessings. Don't worry, it's all consistent. We thought about all these issues, we worked them out, okay, and that's it. Okay, and now, just so you understand that what we've learned now in this whole hour of ours, okay, is, okay, basically it's, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, okay, till here, these lines, from here to here. That's what we spent the last hour learning. Okay, so you could see it could take some time to learn Talmud, but it is interesting, right? Like the way it's laid out and the discussion, and you can see how sharp you could become also by learning these things and how much information you can learn about it, and sometimes make it fun even.
I still don't know how you differentiate the morning from the evening if the words are the same.
So you don't. You just say the same. You say the same word.
Then you would just call it the Shema instead of the morning Shema and the evening Shema.
It's only
I know, but you there's no Shema in the afternoon. So if I don't call it the morning Shema and the evening Shema, then I would think I could say the Shema any time of the day. But you cannot.
I don't.
You can only say the Shema in the morning and the evening.
What about when you're walking?
If you say it, then it's not part of the obligation of saying the
Okay,
Shema.
so
You can say the Shema whenever you want. You can say, 24/7. Okay? But in terms of the obligation of saying the Shema, it's only in the morning and in the evening. Okay? Now I want to complete this part about the Talmud with this passage from the Talmud from Eruvin 13b, which is, how is Halacha decided? Okay? Now this is only on the screen. So you put the pages down. Okay. The biggest question is, how do you decide which rabbi is correct? Okay. And the Talmud, the rabbis themselves want to give us sort of like guidelines on how you decide how is halacha decided. Rabbi Abba said that Shmuel said for 3 years, Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel disagreed. Okay, rabbis disagreed, but they had very strong disagreements for 3 years. These said the halacha, the ruling, is in according with our opinion, and these said, no, the halacha is according with our opinion. Okay, ultimately, a divine voice emerged and proclaimed, both these and those are the words of the living God. However, the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Bet Hillel. So this is fascinating. This is like a theological thing. I wanted you to only see. I wanted you to see that the Talmud is not just about the more legality laws. It's also about like more philosophy. When rabbis argue, when people argue, how do you know which is the right, correct form of argument? Okay, and a voice comes from heaven and says, "These are the words of God." And these are the words of a living God. You're both right in that sense, okay? In the sense that if you argue for the sake of God and because you are learning Torah and you understand it in this way and I understand it in that way, it doesn't mean I'm right and you're wrong. On the contrary, I have to look at your opinion as godly opinions as well, okay? However, sometimes you have to decide, right? If we would be in a synagogue here, and we would have a committee and we need to decide, it's not, that Jerry's arguments are better than Steve's argument, right? They're both on the board. I didn't, you're always right, Steve. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I meant to make, you're always right, Jerry. Okay. But sometimes, okay, right? But sometimes you have to decide.
Word of God.
Okay, sometimes you do have to decide because the synagogue can only do one thing. Okay, that. So if these are both the living words of God, how can you decide between the words of God? And they tell us, halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Bet Hillel. I'm like, wow, that's really arbitrary. That's not fair. What about Bet Shammai? If they're the word of God, why aren't they chosen? And then the most fascinating answer comes. This is the best part of the Talmud that I love the most. Okay. The Gemara asks, since both these and those are the words of the living God, why were Bet Hillel privileged to have the halacha established in according with their opinion? It's not fair. It doesn't make sense. Like, why are you abandoning the house of Shammai? Do you know the answer? Did anyone learn this part? Okay. Okay, so now you're in for a very interesting surprise.
Right.
The reason is that, and there are a few reasons, they were agreeable, the house of Hillel, and forbearing, showing restraint when affronted, and when they taught the halacha, they would teach both their own statements and the statements of Bet Shammai, and moreover, when they formulated their teachings and cited a dispute, they prioritized the statements of Bet Shammai to their own statements in deference to Bet Shammai.
Wow.
Deference.
In deference, okay? So first of all, what's the most important part that's missing? Why is halacha not decided according to Bet Hillel?
It is decided.
It's not because they're right. It's not because they have a better argument. Okay, both arguments are good. Both arguments are the words of God. And this is fascinating, right? Because in our society today, we want to know the truth. Like who's the best? Who's the most correct? Both answers are correct. Hold on a second. Okay. But here they're saying to us, no, it's all about how they did it. It's all about their being like kinder, mensch, right?
Yeah.
Menschlichkeit.
I'm gonna tell you this and then I'll tell you mine, but here's.
And they also quoted their counterpart, Bet Shammai. They would bring, their words and they would explain them. And they were just they did it in a more lenient way, in a way that's more presentable to the people. Bet Shammai was like, I'm right, I don't care. Okay, I'm going to argue you, and I'm not going to quote you because there's no point in quoting you because you're wrong. Now, Bet Hillel also thought that the other ones are wrong, or else they would, because this is their opinion. But they said, but I'll quote you. I'll still bring. Maybe you have a valid point. Maybe in the future someone will decide that they want to follow your halacha. But the preference of the way you're stating halacha has to be in a pleasant manner. It has to be in a way that's inclusive, and you always have to less divisive, and you always have to give credit to the other side as well. Yes,
Don't you think that would be a great way, when you and I rewrite?
for
the
world
commentary,
peace.
I would put
Yeah.
that on a preface,
Mhm.
minus the names. I mean, it's such a clarifying,
This is.
it puts everything into perspective.
amazing.
Yeah.
And eliminates,
So people are saying we agree to disagree. But because this is my opinion, and it feels better for me, when I write my opinion, I will say, this is my opinion, but my colleague over here, we agreed to disagree. Their opinion also has worth, so I am reporting it also. Is that what we're saying
Yes.
here?
Yeah, that's
And
what we're
that-
saying, and this is we think it's a modern concept, but we're talking about times here where if your culture won, you would erase everything else. Okay,
Oh, right.
you would disregard
Well, that's
completely
happening
the
right now.
others. You would say they were wrong and they need to be erased and and no one would ever repeat them. But the Jewish ethos, which is really the Western, the Western culture is based on this religion, okay, is really telling us this is like an academia, in proper academia, how you would quote and how you would treat other opinions. Okay,
Makes
but
us-
it's not just opinions. This is also rulings of how to do things. It's even more than just opinions. Okay, because when I say, okay, you say this, I say we agree to disagree. You can't say that in a household, right? I mean, right, when you're living with someone, when you're in a community, in a family, in a city, or there are elections or something, you have to choose one way. Sometimes like that animosity brings, much harder situations. But if you're able to look at the view of the other side, not as your enemy, not as something like, that's contradicting to everything you believe it, you're able to see that also as the word of God. And so might go into the mind, even of like your political adversary, but you're able to see it in a way that there's some sense to it, there's some point to it. We have to decide, we have to go in a certain way, it has to be clear, but I'm open-minded enough to look at the other way. That's a very good way of living, I think, philosophically.
But if in a family, not to decide is to decide. I mean, if you have teenagers and you don't decide on a curfew, not to decide is to decide, and they'll come home at midnight. Because you haven't decided.
Yeah, so you have to decide,
You
right?
have to sometimes be the bad guy
Right,
and say this is
exactly.
the decision.
Yeah,
Rabbi, would you repeat, please, where it is written, what you said?
it is written in Eruvin 13b.
What is this Eruvin?
Eruvin is one of the tractates of the Talmud, okay, the Babylonian tractate, and it's page 13.
Babylonian tractor, even
Yeah.
earlier was.
Page
The
13,
Babylonian,
you know,
Oh.
and it's page 13, side B. Remember I said there are two sides to every Talmud page?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's where it's brought,
But
yes.
it's so much easier for the populace, though, to decide, then they can decide for themselves what looks better to them, what feels better, or even a combination of both, whatever the problem is.
You have to learn to compromise.
You have to learn to compromise, right? Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's a very big part. And Bet Hillel is really the more lenient, almost always. Beit Hillel is almost always more lenient and more accessible in that way. That's how halacha should also be. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everyone. Yeah.